Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining to listen to some alumni stories about their career paths today. We appreciate you taking the time to join us and hear how those career paths were influenced by their time at Roger Williams. We have a really cool panel of alumni for you here, and Chris Gerlicka from our career development office, who is going to take the lead throughout the rest of this panel. Before we begin, I am going to read our land and labor acknowledgement. Here at the law school, we always take a moment to reflect on the lands on which we reside. We're coming from many places, both physically and remotely, and we want to acknowledge the ancestral homelands and traditional territories of Indigenous and Native peoples who've been here since time immemorial. And to recognize that we must continue to build our solidarity and kinship with Native peoples across the Americas and across the globe. Roger Williams University School of Law is located in Bristol, Rhode Island. And so we acknowledge and honor the Narragansett and Pokanoket people and Siouxs, the original name of the land that our campus resides on. We also acknowledge that this country would not exist if not for the free labor of enslaved labor of Black people. We recognize that the town of Bristol and the very land our campus resides on have benefited significantly from the trade of enslaved people from Africa. The economy of New England, Rhode Island, and more specifically Bristol, was built from wealth generated through the triangle trade of human lives. During this time of national reckoning with our history of slavery and the disparate treatment of Black people, we honor the legacy of the African diaspora and the Black lives, knowledge, and skills stolen due to the violence and white supremacy of this nation. As upholders of justice, we believe that our students, who will soon be practitioners of law, can be and already are agents of change. Thank you. And like I said, I'm going to turn this panel over to Chris. And Chris, welcome. Chris is an alum of the law school as well. We are classmates, class of 2012, and he is now in our career development office, like I said in the beginning. So Chris, welcome and thank you.
Thank you, Kate. Welcome, everyone. I'm excited to bring this assortment of alum, some of which I know from my time as a student and also working in career development. So I will ask you each to introduce yourselves, name, pronouns, year you graduated, and where you currently work. So let's start with Jackie.
Sure, hello. My name is Jackie Roleri, and I graduated from Roger Williams in 2011 from the law school. I also participated in the joint degree program with the University of Rhode Island. And I actually graduated from that program in 2012. And I currently am the Deputy Chief of the Oceans and Coast Section within the Office of General Counsel at NOAA, which is the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration.
Thank you, Jackie. Lai?
Thanks for having me, Chris. My name's Lai Oduyingbo. I'm class of 2014, so I was at the law school when Chris was there for some point in time. I have my own practice. It's Odu Law Firm. It's based out of Cranston, Rhode Island. Before that, I worked in veterans disability benefits, and I also had some experience with in-house corporate law. So right now, I'm actually handling personal injury matters and employment law matters. So it's been quite the change since 2014.
Thank you. Casey?
Hi, thanks for having me, Chris. My name is Casey O'Brien. I graduated in 2015. I am currently, I just started a new role in February, and I'm currently corporate counsel at Amazon, working with the Global Mile Logistics team.
Thank you. And last but never least, Jessica.
Hi, my name is Jessica Insurriaga. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I graduated May of 2021, and currently I am an assistant public defender with the Law Office of the Public Defender for the state of New Mexico in Las Cruces, New Mexico.
Awesome, thank you. And so I think I'll start with Lai because you already kind of started this question. Can you kind of talk about your path to where you currently are, and what it's like now as a solo in your current position.
If we start at the end, it's crazy, but I'll start at the beginning and say that I worked at a local law firm that's recognized nationally for veterans disability benefits. They have a clinic at the law school. I was there for about 3 years, basically helping veterans who were wrongfully denied disability benefits from the government. So any disabilities related to service that qualified, they would receive benefits. If they were denied for any reason, there was a whole written appeal process that I helped with. I did that for about 3 years, and then I kind of sought something different. I've always had a business background, so I went in-house to a corporation also in Providence that's in the aerospace industry. Their world headquarters is there. I basically focused on contracts and anti-corruption compliance and government contracts, things related to that, because it was a very big business. I did that for a few years, and then ultimately I decided I kind of like having the individual client, not the dealing with business units and businesses all the time. I like that individual personal connection. I wanted to do something that was on my own because I had already now worked at a firm and in-house and striking out over there. So I started my own practice. It's been great, a little wild, but I do help individuals every day, whether it's on the injury side, namely car accidents and slip and falls, or employment side is various things like anything from being wrongfully terminated, discriminated against for various reasons, or just not getting your final paycheck from your employer. I've done all of those things. So it's been interesting, more on the employee side, because a lot of employee rights I didn't even know about until I started really getting into the law.
Great, thank you. Casey, with your new job, what's your path been like since 2015?
Yeah, so right, two months into this new position, so far so good. Before that, I was at a law firm for about 6 years. My firm was a maritime and transportation firm in New York. And I still do practice maritime and transportation law, but it's very different in-house. At the law firm, my practice involved litigation, arbitration, dispute resolution on matters including quite a lot of cargo damage, cargo loss claims. So that's anything from when a ship runs aground in the Panama Canal and cargo is spoiled due to delay, containers falling off ships, trucks, low bridging oversized cargo, and railroad derailments and things like that. Also some charter party disputes, insurance defense on the property side a little bit, and infrequently, but occasionally some personal injury work. So now, even though my roles have changed, my employment has changed, at Amazon, I am still involved in maritime and transportation law, but again, very, very different. It's much more transactional based. And I'm really there to support one client, which is the Global Mile team, the team that handles shipments and logistics into the Amazon network. So, I'm also exposed to some regulatory matters for the first time in kind of a significant way. And I'm still handling some commercial disputes, but certainly from a more hands-off way. And very slowly, I am adding data privacy and antitrust and sustainability and other types of law to my resume. But yeah, that's kind of the short path, I guess, to where I am now.
Great, that was a lovely memory lane for me, because you were talking about so many of my classes that I took here, and I think regulations, what a perfect segue to move on to Jackie.
Yes, thank you. So working for NOAA is a federal agency, and I actually started working for NOAA straight out of law school. So I've been at NOAA since 2011. And I came to NOAA through a federal government-wide program called it was through this fellowship program, the Presidential Management Fellowship Program, which is now part of this broader category they call the Pathways Program. And so when I came to NOAA in 2011, I actually started in a policy position working for NOAA's Office for Coastal Management, which works primarily with a federal law called the Coastal Zone Management Act. And so I worked a lot with states who have coastal management programs. And even at that time, I would say did a fair amount of work related to regulations and implementation of that statute, but on the program side, so not actually practicing law. And then in 2015, I transferred over to NOAA's Office of General Counsel into our Oceans and Coast section where I currently am. And I was an attorney advisor for a few years before I became a manager within that section. And I would say my work varies quite a lot, which is one thing I really like about it. And NOAA is a science-based agency, and a lot of what I focus on is environmental protection, and with a real focus on sort of the marine, ocean, coastal, Great Lakes environment. And the nature of my work, I would say, is, well, I'll take a step back. So as an attorney for the agency, I advise folks who work for the agency, and specifically I help counsel primarily the National Ocean Service and our Office of Marine and Aviation Operations. So they're the folks who operate our ships and planes. And there's obviously other parts of the agency who we also interact with quite a lot through other sections of general counsel. But I would say on sort of a daily basis, the work ranges from, helping advise clients as they're drafting regulations to implement statutes that NOAA is responsible for, helping them address specific issues as they arise. So it could be related to, say, like permits that they issued, going through administrative appeals processes. So we work a lot with the Administrative Procedures Act. We also handle, not often, but we do get involved in litigation. And so when we are involved in litigation as counsel for the agency, we're sort of the subject matter expert, but we have someone from the Department of Justice working with us, and they're the ones typically who are, doing the bulk of the drafting, and we help provide input into it and review. And then if we are in court, they're the ones standing up litigating, and we're sort of the second chair at the table with them. And let's see, I guess, should I stop there, or is that? I can add, as a manager, I help. So my boss and I manage 7 staff attorneys and a program specialist. And so as a manager, part of what I do, I still have a substantive portfolio, but a good amount of my time is also spent helping, make sure other attorneys have a decent workload, making sure our clients' needs are getting met, and just kind of helping sort of run the office on a day-to-day basis.
Fantastic, thank you. Jessica?
So mine's kind of a long path, but it's a short explanation. So I was I was a mom out of undergraduate, so I decided to wait for law school. I went into law school in my 30s. During that time, I worked as a secretary for personal injury law firm for about 10 years, and kind of decided that wasn't for me. For me personally, I know it is for a lot of people, but for me personally, it was not. My heart has always been in public defender work. So once my kid entered middle school, we decided it was time for me to finally go to law school. And since I graduated law school in 2021, which hasn't even been a full year yet, but it feels like it's been a lot longer. Since then, I've only been working as a public defender. so my goal was always to leave to law school and return and be a public defender close to my home. I'm from El Paso, Texas, but I work in New Mexico, which is maybe like 20 minutes away. And luckily for me, New Mexico hires pre-bar passage. So I was able to start immediately after taking the bar, like the following Monday after taking the bar. So, so I started as a limited practitioner. And then in September, I was licensed and became an assistant public defender. And ever since then, it's just been incredibly fast paced. Everything you hear about the workload of a public defender is very much true, but I have a very good support team here. The felony attorneys and the magistrate attorneys are all wonderful. Although I will say I was told in law school that you don't go to trial very much as an attorney. I've been 4 times in the first 4 months, and have 5 more this April. So that was a lie, but it's awesome. It's such a great experience. Like I said, very fast paced. I'm in the courtroom, well, telephonically, but in the courtroom almost every day, defending individuals who have mental health issues, indigent clients, people have really never been given a shot and are just kind of judged by the worst thing they've ever done. And it's just so fulfilling. So it's incredibly fast paced and busy, but I love it. And it's been my path since I started law school. So it's been great. It's been fulfilling.
Fantastic. Jess, I'm actually going to stay on you for the next question because you're the most recent grad, and to give everyone a little chance. What are the things that you did well at Roger Williams that are still relevant today, or that you feel that you still carry with you kind of every day so far?
Yeah, so I think and the reason I bring this up, my path was a little different because I knew what I was doing going into law school, and I knew I wanted to do public defender work. So I focused a lot of my activities and things on that. But I did alternative spring break, which I'm sure everyone will learn about later. But during spring break, I interned with the Committee for Public Counsel Services in Massachusetts, which is their public defender's office. I also did the public interest externship with the Committee for Public Counsel Services, again in Massachusetts. I did street law for 2 years, teaching kids about their legal rights. And then I came back a second year to do that as a student leader. And then I did the criminal defense clinic, Moot court. And then during the summer, I interned with private criminal defense attorneys. So all of that, I was able to see just how much of not only just the workload, but get to meet people who are passionate about what they did. And so even though you're kind of in the droll of law school and probably exhausted, those programs kind of helped me rejuvenate my passion for what it is that I wanted to do and kind of keep my head and heart like in the end game. And everything essentially I've learned, I do now comes based off of what came from all of those experiences, because I have not only the opportunity to share my insight as to like, hey, Massachusetts did this differently, or Rhode Island did this differently, and experiences from people that A, have maybe never been to the East Coast, but B, are used to doing things their way. So it's been helpful in that way. And then also I kind of went into law school not wanting to really associate with anybody and just kind of wanting to focus on myself. But that kind of made me interact with so many people from different backgrounds, kind of get a grasp on being able to speak in front of people, which I never did before. And then once law school came, I never stopped doing it, and I still do it all the time. So just all of those little aspects have kind of molded me into, granted, it's only been a couple months, but I feel like it's been much longer, and it's because of the programs I was involved in at school.
Fantastic, thank you. Casey?
Yeah, so I think that Jessica has me beat out for the number of activities for sure. But I will say, it is so important to participate in activities that the school offers. I did participate in a handful of activities, and I think that, for me personally, the ones that were so helpful as far as aligning me with what I wanted in a career, I sort of boiled it down to three. So first off is the Sea Grant Law Fellow role through the Marine Affairs Institute. And that's basically research and writing. And for me, I thought that was just so cool because it was my first opportunity to actually do real legal research for an organization. I worked with Save the Bay, and to actually contribute to the organization's mission and some of their programs and knowledge base. So that was really neat, a great opportunity that was put together through the Marine Affairs Institute. And I think one of the big ones too was a corporate counsel externship, which I participated in my 3L year. I was paired with Moran Shipping Agencies in Providence, Rhode Island, which is a shipping agency. They operate internationally, and they essentially operate as agents for ships that come into ports, helping vessels get supplies that they need during port stops and things. And so in that role, that was really great. I think one, just because it introduced me to what it actually means to work for a company, what it actually means to work in the maritime industry, just understanding how things work in the ports and on the grounds, and then two, to understand what's important to a corporate client. I worked with Gavin Black, who is another Roger Williams alum. He's general counsel at Moran, and it was just he's a great person to meet, and we are still to this day friends. And I consider him to be a professional mentor, and we'll see each other once a year or so, and just keep in touch on things that are going on. But just to be able to see everything that came across his desk, and understand what it actually means to be a corporate counsel in a company, whether it's dealing with outside counsel on a lawsuit in California or Texas, or dealing with a new policy that's in place, or submitting documents for subpoena to government agencies or something like that. So that was really neat. And then I will also just mention Admiralty Moot Court competition. It's an annual competition. Roger Williams has sent 2 teams for ages and ages, and has a really good track record of alumni participation for the new and upcoming teams. I think actually alumni were up in Bristol, I think last weekend, to help the current team practice for the competition, which is just around the corner. But that was really great because basically it's a moot court competition that comes up with fake scenarios based on very real issues that are currently plaguing the maritime courts around the country. So it was a really neat experience to be able to learn about these very discrete issues that I may or may not ever come across again, but it provided a really great basis to, one, understand the industry, to two, hone some skills that needed honing, I think, writing and researching, and also, I did not take advantage of too many oral argument opportunities before joining the moot court team, so that was a good experience. And really just meeting people in an industry that I wanted to end up in. Through the Admiralty Moot Court team, I did actually meet my now former colleague who helped introduce me to the firm that I worked at for 6 years, and also just knowing different firms that were involved in the maritime space, and then seeing people from other firms, whether they be judges or other or other teams from different schools, and kind of just getting to know people a little bit better that way. And yeah, so it's those, I think, are the big three for me.
Great, awesome, thank you. Lai, how about you? Any classes, experiences that are still relevant to you in your practice?
Sure. So I would definitely say when I was in law school, I connected with a lot of people, and the quality of the people in my class was good. So it made it easy, but I certainly went out of my way to meet as many people as I could, and I wasn't afraid to meet different types of people. And it definitely helped, because from times I was looking for jobs to now when I'm networking with people at all different firms, it really could come back to haunt you if you do the opposite and you're not connecting with people where you know nobody. Roger Williams is the only law school in Rhode Island, so it's the #1 law school in Rhode Island, but also it is filled with people who are ultimately going to be doing very big things in big places, and that wasn't really my inclination in initially meeting the people, but it definitely has helped. In terms of things that did not really help me, I definitely did not figure out what exactly I wanted to do while I was in law school. I was so focused on just trying to do my best in law school with the classes, which is important, but definitely trying to figure out what you want to do. I participated in externships and different types of groups that provided practical experience, which was good. So I did a corporate counsel externship as well as one with Rhode Island Legal Services for public services, and they were both great and gave me insight into those areas of the profession. But definitely I didn't hone in on an area where it was like, all right, this is what I want to do. It wasn't until very recently where I really focused on that, and it definitely would have suited me better to have identified that earlier, especially in law school, where you think you're as busy as you'll ever be until you're not in law school, and then you become as busy as you will ever be. So.
Thank you, Lai. Jackie?
Yeah, so similar, I think, to what Jessica said, I was fortunate in that going into law school, I sort of knew where I wanted to end up. And so I was able to very much tailor my courses and sort of the extracurricular stuff in that direction, which for me was working in sort of the marine and environmental realm. And like I mentioned, I did the joint degree program at the University of Rhode Island. So I have a Master's of Marine Affairs from there. And I got pretty engaged, I would say, in a number of activities from, I was involved with the Environmental Law Society, the Maritime Law Society. Like Casey, I did the Sea Grant Law Fellowship, which I thought was a really great experience. And actually, I had a sort of fortuitous experience there where I helped, the law school runs these marine symposiums every other year typically. And my project was related to the symposium. And through all that, the day of the symposium, I met Senator Whitehouse, who was sort of giving opening remarks. And long story short, I ended up being able to intern for him in his Providence office that summer, which was a really awesome experience. And the next summer, I think, if I'm remembering correctly, is when I interned for NOAA's Office of General Counsel. And actually, when I did that, I was able to get a public service stipend from the law school, which helped enable me to spend the summer in DC, which, for doing an unpaid internship can otherwise be kind of challenging to orchestrate. So that was something I was really grateful for from the law school. I also was on the law review and really enjoyed that experience. I think even now, I will say, I think one of the most important skills for an attorney is your writing skills. And for me, that really gave me a good opportunity to further hone my writing and editing skills. And it's also a cool opportunity if you're able to get published, to have that on your resume when you're applying for jobs. And I think similar to moot court, is just something that employers seem to look highly upon. Let's see. I think those are probably the highlights. I did other things like worked in the library, which was a good way to make some money while you're in law school if you're looking to do that. But those are probably. Oh, and I did a judicial externship actually, which was also a great experience. That was during my third year with Judge Procaccini, who I don't know if he's still teaching at Roger Williams, but he was fantastic. He for years taught trial advocacy. And so it was a really nice opportunity, first having him as a professor, having a judge as your professor, teaching you trial advocacy. And then during the externship, actually getting to sit in court with him and kind of observe, just what it was like to have, for being a judge in the state of Rhode Island. So.
Great, yeah, and I'm not sure if he still is teaching, but we do have a number of judges on staff who are teaching at various classes. I know one of our alum who are on the Rhode Island Workers' Compensation Court teaches our workers' compensation class and things like that. So just further, we're very entangled in Rhode Island and very blessed to be the only law school. So this kind of last question for me is a bit of a curveball, and I'm going to start with Casey. So do you think it's most important to focus on theory and policy or the black letter law while you're in law school?
Ooh. Well, that's a great question. I think, as far as, I don't know if this quite answers the question, but I'm going to go with it anyway. So as far as, sort of the black letter classes that we have, I think that they're certainly important. You got to take civil procedure. I use civil procedure. Well, I guess in my last job, I used civil procedure more than I ever thought I would ever have to use it in school. But it's important to take those black letter law classes. For me, once I actually got through like the first year or 2 years, I can't even remember the schedule now, but certainly the first year of the mandatory classes, for me, taking classes that were more focused on understanding the issues and understanding the background of the subject matter that I wanted to actually practice was really important. And so I, could have gone without, I don't even know if I should say it. I could have gone without wills and trusts class, that's for sure. And just focused on more maritime classes. And I know Jackie had mentioned trial advocacy and some of those more practical classes that are more sort of, I guess, actually seeing and doing and practicing what you intend to practice would have was good for me.
Great. Jessica?
I'm glad that question did not go to me first, I will say that. But I agree completely with Casey. I think the black letter law classes, they're very important, but I think it's important to be realistic about what your purpose of law school is to be. For me, again, because I went in a little bit older, I really didn't have a second shot at doing this. Either I was going to do it right and be prepared, and I didn't really have time to really mess around. And so one of the things is that I talked to several students and professors before coming to Roger Williams, which is the reason that I chose Roger Williams, having never been to the school, because I wasn't about to fly 20 hours to go see it or drive. But one of the things that solidified it for me was that I was going to get a lot of experience in the classes. And so kind of how Casey mentioned, I was able to look up and see what professors were at Roger Williams, and the trial ad professor was a practicing public defender. My criminal litigation class was a practicing criminal defense attorney. My criminal law professor was a federal public defender previously. And so those were things that were important to me in making sure I got as much experience as I could in law school. I did take a couple classes that I knew for sure I would never learn on my own for the bar, but my focus was on getting involved with the clinics. Luckily, the school had the clinical guarantee where you're guaranteed a clinic. And so that was important to me to make sure I did the criminal defense clinic and the public interest externship. And I will say now, after having gone through all of that and having conversations with my supervisors, they say that is the main reason that I got hired, was because I was not going to require a lot of training. Granted, this isn't for every single position, but a lot of places are going to look to see what it is that you bring as well. And so I had a lot of the basics and experience, and it was just gonna, especially fast-paced jobs, they want people that have had that experience. And Roger Williams being the only school in Rhode Island meant that I was going to have those opportunities, not just with externships, but that alumni and practicing attorneys were going to come back to the law school and kind of offer their help. And so while I think the black letter law is important, it doesn't really help my clients very much. So I will say that theory is to me is more important.
Jackie, any thoughts?
Yes, I think I'd probably agree with what Jessica was just saying, in that I think having the foundational courses in law school is important and very useful for just helping you with your critical thinking skills and getting some of that like basic groundwork for being an attorney. And I do think taking classes, for me, for example, taking ocean and coastal law, I learned like the tip of the iceberg of a couple of laws that I now work with. But I think this is probably true for many attorney positions. You're going to become an expert on, certain laws. At least for me, like there's certain laws I know very well. And it took me time to learn those on the job. I may have had an idea of them off the bat. But so I think it's okay to realize that going into, in law school, you'll get some basics, I think, but the more sort of practical experience you can get while you're in law school, I think is super helpful. And I think will also help you when you're doing your internships and that sort of thing. I can say I've had many excellent Roger Williams students now as interns in my office. And I think one thing I really value in interns is someone who can come in. They might not have the subject matter expertise, obviously, but someone who can, kind of think on their feet and can kind of take an assignment and run with it a little bit. And so I think some of that comes from having some of that practical experience, maybe doing an externship or that sort of thing, where you just get used to being in a professional environment and understanding how you can contribute to the office in a way that helps the attorneys you're working with and, is productive. So yeah, I think that's probably my general response.
All right, thank you, Jackie. And finally, Lai.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go with the group. I think it's important that you have that kind of black letter law, those classes, and have basically that foundation. It's important to know. I actually come across it a lot in both the injury context and then some of the theories that we use in employment law cases. So I think it's important, but ultimately the theories and the policies is what's changing. So that's usually what you're arguing about. A lot of these cases are ultimately negotiations. So that's what you're negotiating about. You're not really focusing on those kind of things that are well established, so to speak. So I definitely enjoyed learning in school those kind of foundational classes. That was actually may have not been my best grades year, but my most the year that I enjoyed the most was taking those classes like that. Basically were the reason why you wanted to be a lawyer and go to law school and do all those. But practically speaking, and what's going to benefit you long term and what you're going to see more, I really feel like because the theories can always change, policies can change, and kind of those are what are applied practically. That's ultimately what you should treat as more important, even though I do feel like both are important for a lawyer to have, or someone in the law to have.
Thank you all and for handling the curveballs. And so thank you so much. And I will turn it over to Kate to kind of finish this out.
Yeah, and so I just want to thank all of you for your insights. I know that it can be really valuable to incoming students. We always have questions about not only like where our alums end up, but really how they got here. And that's why we think these panels are so important.